They say we are live. We'll let a few people get in here. What do you do for a living?
I'm a mechanical contractor. I work a lot for Caterpillar and Northrop Grumman, the rocket plant up here, and some other places, a few other places, but mostly.
Twisting wrenches.
I do what?
Twisting wrenches.
Yeah, living the dream, man.
Yes, sir. That's all it is. Living the dream. Didn't find a better place to live it in either. Well, we got James Dockery in here, Catfish Headhunters. George Cunningham, Fishing with Chad, PD. They'll come dragging in here in a little bit. I don't know why the chat is showing up slow. I'm on a computer and this thing is slow. I'm like you. Larry, I live out in the woods, so I don't hardly get a signal for anything. We had to pay extra to get what little bit we can get out here.
Yeah.
Betty Jean, Joe Bug, PD. Well, guys, let's start this out by saying God bless America. God bless each and every one of you and your families. And tonight we got a special guest. We got the legendary Larry Moose in the house with us tonight. Thank you for coming in, Larry.
Man, I appreciate you having me.
Well, we usually ended up with about 50 to 60 guests people in chat. And I know they'd like to hear from a legend like you that's been out there, been there, done that. Caught your share of monsters. Got a couple over 100-pounders, don't you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think that's all catfishermen's major goal to break that triple digits. But
yeah, it don't happen very often.
No, you don't see too many. I seen one the other day. I think 103-pounder somebody brought in.
Yeah.
Well, let's learn a little bit about you, Larry. What really got you started into catfishing to begin with?
Well, I've catfished ever since I can remember, I guess. I catfished with my grandmother when I was a real little boy. And I've always enjoyed all kind of fishing. I like brim fishing, crappie fishing, bass fishing. I bass fished for a while. And but there's something about fishing for the biggest fish in the river is what's always been on my mind with catfishing.
Yes, sir.
It's been an obsession, you know.
Yeah, it's hard not to chase something that got a chance to break a line.
Yeah, that's right. And like Jeff Dodd said one time, he said, "You know why them big ones get away?" I said, "No, why they get away, Jeff?" He said, "Because they can. That's why."
That's a fact.
Yeah,
that's a fact. But I mean, yeah, we've learned, I guess, with grandpas and mothers and daddies and brothers or uncles or whatever, got us all into wanting to chase that little fish or that big fish or whatever. But what changed your mind into really start going after the trophy cats?
Well, just got to catching some big fish and kind of learned a few things, put some things together and figured out how to catch them and figured out what to do to catch big ones instead of little ones and just got to working on that. And the first as far as tournaments, really, the first tournament that I ever fished was the World Championship of Catfishing at Pickwick. It's the oldest tournament of any kind of fishing tournament in the country. This will be the 78th year of it. And it's at Savannah. And but anyway, I fished it the first time in like 2001, I think, and Phil King won it. And it was really a prestigious thing to win that, and it still is. And I've won it one time, and I've been second in it 4 times, and I've been everywhere in between it sometime or another, from somewhere between first and last. But the first time I fished it, Phil won it, and it was just, I said, I'm going to win that one day. and it took me 18 years to win it.
There you go.
But I had a lot of top 10 finishes in it, and it's been a lot of fun. And then I fished a lot of tournaments all around the country in between, but that's what kind of got me started. And
that's a goal. You had a goal. You fished it the first time, and you knew that was something you wanted to do. Whether win, lose, fall, it didn't matter. You had it on your mind. That's what you chose to do.
Yeah.
And I wish more Americans actually would have that attitude. This, I've got this is my goal. This is the way I want my life to go. And excuse my language, come hell or high water, you're going to make it happen.
Yeah. Well, most of them would have had enough sense to quit before 18 years.
Well, it does get kind of expensive chasing some of them dreams sometimes.
Yeah,
it sure does.
But I've got to fish all over the country. I fished Virginia, fished South Carolina. I fished in just about every major river in the country, east of the Mississippi and a few west of the Mississippi. And I've really had a large time with this, and it's been good to me.
We got some comments in here. It's hard for me to keep up with the comments. They get to going so fast. Sorry about that. Guys, if you don't mind, go in there and give us a good thumbs up and share this out. Mr. Moose is going to share some good information with us tonight. Trying to wait and see if we got some questions. All right, since you did get onto the tournament trail and you talking about fishing a bunch of different lakes across the country, what is one of the first things that you choose to do to go to new waters? What is something that you get in your mind? This is what I got to do. I've never been here before, but I've got to try to figure out how to pattern these fish up so I can catch them.
Well, the biggest thing is figure out where the fish are. You got to figure out where the fish are, and to figure out where the fish are, there's a couple of things the fish has got to do, and one of them is he's got to eat. And so, and that's the way a lot of people base most of their fishing on where a fish feeds, which is not a bad idea, because if they're there feeding, they're going to probably bite. That's not a bad idea, but they don't bite all the time. And first and foremost, I figured out a long time ago that big fish has got to breathe, and little fish can breathe places that big fish can't breathe.
Right.
Sometimes there's not enough oxygen there to support big fish.
Right.
And that's been a big help to me to be able to sort that out and see why there's not big fish in different spots. And most of the time it's an oxygen issue. And the first thing you got to do is breathe, and that's helped me a lot over the years. And another thing that's helped me a lot is my Granny French. When I was just a little boy, when I was 5 years old, we'd fish up in the ditches and stuff, and small rivers and stuff up in northeast Arkansas, and we'd get on fish, and the water be rising usually when we fish those, and the water would start falling. It might not fall just a few inches, and Granny'd say, "Well, there ain't no need to fish in here anymore. We need to we'll go down the river. I know where there's a good deep hole under the bridge down the river. We was doing most of this off the bank." And I know where there's a good deep hole down the river, and them fish be down there tomorrow. All right. So we'd show up there about daylight the next morning and wear them out again.
Right.
And, when that water falls, that taught me when I was a little bitty fella that when that water falls, you need to go down and you need to go deep. And then when that water starts rising, they're going to come up and scatter out and come on up in them tributaries and things like that. And I remember, as far as locating fish, I remember one time we done real well at a tournament in Clarksville, Tennessee, and they got a steam plant down below there, Cumberland steam plant, and I happened to be coming up the river, and I seen a temperature change on my depth finder real quick, in the river, like a 5, maybe a 7-degree temperature change. And what it was the discharge from that steam plant was coming into the river. Well, that whole river, all the way from Cumberland City all the way down to Dover, was hot. And it was in the hot part of summer. You know, I think it was July or August tournament. And so when that temperature dropped about 5 degrees, I seen that on my depth finder, and I was motoring pretty hard coming up the river. And I thought, wait a minute, whoa, let me look at this. And I turned around and went back. And right where that temperature change was, them fish was loaded right there all the way across the river. And what was happening, them fish was coming out of that hotter water. And as soon as they hit that water where they was comfortable, they was just stopping. There was nothing there to hold them. There wasn't a shelf. There wasn't a rise. There wasn't a hole. There wasn't a fall. It was just a temperature change in the river. But them fish were stopping right there, just piling up. And we stopped right, and we couldn't get a bite to save your life until I figured that little piece of information out, and then we sat right there and wore them out. And
Team Wampus Cast wants to know, how do you find the most oxygenated water?
Well, look for big fish is one thing. A lot of times, you know, in the hot summertime, I've seen some of those lakes in Texas. I fished a good bit in Texas. Some of those lakes in Texas I've seen have a thermocline in them to where it looked like nothing living below about 20 feet. I mean, you wouldn't see nothing on your graph below 20 feet. Now, when you start seeing one thing on my graph that I like to see is big fish above little fish. When you see big fish above little fish, most all the time that's catfish. Because any other time you're going to see bait fish of some type and some type of game fish underneath of them, and the bigger fish will be under the little fish. But when you see bigger fish over smaller fish, it's almost always catfish. Okay. And the reason is because right down, have you ever seen an aquarium that didn't get cleaned for a long, long time, a fishing aquarium?
Yes,
and
sir.
It gets cloudy, and right down at the bottom, it's bad cloudy. And your fish won't get down in there, they'll stay up. There ain't no oxygen in there to amount to anything.
Nope.
Well, I realize that them big fish, a lot of times under them situations, is up about 5 foot off the bottom. Well, guess what? Everybody and their mama's out there fishing. They fishing right on the bottom. And they're catching all them little fish because them little fish can handle it down there. They don't need much oxygen. But that was one reason for my dragging rig and a lot of the ways that I actually fish, suspend fish and different things. Them fish may suspend 5 feet. They may suspend 10 feet. And, you know, just watch that graph and put that bait where they're at and try not to spook them.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm really starting to push. I make a float, a catfish float, and it's got the it's got the lightning bug lights mounted into the bobber. And I'm really pushing it because I think that is an overlooked arsenal in your that's an overlooked tool in your arsenal is float fishing for catfish.
Yeah, now, I float fished a lot back in the day, 20 years ago. And what I did was that's when I would take a big swivel. Now we got sinker slides, and I'll use a sinker slide the same way, but I'd take a big swivel and I'd run my line through the eye of it, and I'd put me a bead above it and a bobber stopper. And then I'd just blow me up a balloon just a little bit, and I'd hook that balloon in it. That way I could float any size bait I wanted to use, and use that sinker slide or swivel just like a slip cork for a crappie, basically.
Right.
And that way I could fish. If I want to fish 60 foot deep, I fish 60 foot deep with it.
Right, and I think that's an advantage. A lot of guys that is ordering them from me are using them mainly for flatheads.
Yeah.
They set their live baits over top of the brush or right outside of the brush. It's very accurate at the way that they can present those baits. So they're doing good. And that's what I was going to ask you. Did you do any float fishing? And you just answered that. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
appreciate your input on that. So, I mean, you throw like the Kentucky rig much that gets that bait up off the bottom, or you mainly dragging? I know you said you don't like throwing anchors anymore.
No, I don't throw no. I ain't throw the anchor since 2013. I don't think. And I will drag, or in certain situations I have cast a spinning reel with a float rig on it and get it away from the boat. There's one place that I really like to suspend fish, and it's real good if it's a cloudy day. Where your boat's not casting a shadow because you ain't but about 25 feet of water. And so if it's a bright sunny day, you got to get that bait way away from that boat, because you can watch them fish. You can see them on your depth finder, and just as soon as you get over them, they scatter, and they're scattering from the shadow of that boat, and you can't hardly fish right straight off the side of the boat, whenever you're in that shallow water and in bright sun. And so I use a float some then in them situations where I get it away from the boat.
So, and you're thinking that catfish are actually a very spooky fish when it comes to any man-made objects or something different on the water. You think they're that in tune with their surroundings? Yeah,
they are. If you look in Genesis, in ninth chapter, I believe, of Genesis, the ark had landed, and God made it so that people could eat meat and all that. He said, I'm going to give you, just like I did the herbs of the field, I'm going to give you the beast of the field, the fowl of the air, and the fish of the sea. Everything that crawls on the ground, swims, flies, all that is going to be food for you. You take it with thanksgiving, but the fear and the dread of you shall be upon the beast of the field and the fowl of the air and the fish of the sea. And so them fish are scared of you. They don't even know why they're scared of you. They're scared of you because God put it in them to be scared of you.
There you go. They're programmed. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that totally makes sense. It does. And I mean, I read that, but until I guess you put it in layman's terms, that it really comes home. Because if you think about, you go out into a set of woods that you run into a deer, that deer's never seen you before, don't know you human or whatever, and he's spooked. Mm-hmm. But yet you can be sitting in a tree stand and a turkey come walking by him, he don't pay it no attention.
That's right.
So makes perfect sense to me. Perfect sense. Well, let's get a little bit of technical. What kind of rods you throwing?
Well, I don't throw nothing. If anybody ever got one of my reels, I get one that never been thrown. I don't hardly wear my reels out. I just let down the side. I'm either bumping or dragging or suspending. I rarely ever throw a rod unless I'm trying to catch bait.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
So when you're bumping down through there, of course, you're leading the line out as you're going down, and you're dragging, so you don't cast your rods out and hook up your planer boards and all that. You just set them out.
I just set them out. I don't planer board much. I just go ahead and target my fish. You ain't got to, you ain't got to put a bait right where the fish are. If you'll just, my theory is, if you'll get the scent of the bait where the fish is, he'll move out there and get it.
So you figuring out with flatheads also?
Well, let me tell you something about me and flatheads. You couldn't trust them in the outhouse with a muzzle on. When I first started fishing tournaments, I would find some flatheads, catch 2 or 3 flatheads, and man, I'd say, "Oh boy, I got this thing won." And I'd come back the next day and I get my feelings hurt. Well, they hurt my feelings enough times that I will not target a flathead in the catfish tournament.
There you go.
I'm going to target the blues if every now and then I catch one and weigh him in a catfish tournament, but I wasn't after him.
There you go. Well, I mean, that makes you more specific. That helps narrow your field down to what you're chasing. That makes you more apt to catch them bigger fish on a regular basis instead of kind of scattering out. Yeah, I caught one last week, but it was a month since I caught one again. And this way, you're more specific to that that specific fish.
And I don't have to carry near as many baits neither.
No, there you
If
go.
I got fresh skipjack, that's about what I'm going to fish with about 99% of the time.
Okay, so that's probably your favorite bait to throw. And I can understand why. We don't have them here, but I've seen them, and that's an oily, bloody fish, and I can see why that'd be like catfish candy, just,
Yeah.
And I have heard them talking. Do you think that the skipjack, because of social media and the catfish world, that the skipjack is taking a hard hit?
I don't know. I mean, skipjack is a little tough now, but I can remember skipjack being tough 20 years ago too. It runs in cycles like anything else. I don't think that I really as many millions of them things that spawn out when they spawn, because they don't bed like a catfish or a bass or something like that. They don't bed, they spawn. Man, when them things spawn out, the river is hatched full of them things. And I just didn't see you hurting them with a rod and reel. I don't care how many boats you put out there on them. Now you'll make them change they got that fear and dread in them too. You'll make them change their habits. You might have to try something different on them. I have to catch skipjack different than what I did back when I first started catfishing tournaments,
Somebody want to know, what size hook and type do you use? That's your favorite brand.
I use a Daiichi Circle Chunk Light. 7/0 is my go-to hook. Just about all the time. I will downsize to a 5/0. Sometimes I'll tie a 5/0. Since we've got the length laws and stuff where I've got to have 3 small fish too in the bag limit.
Right.
I'll tie a 5/0 just about 2 inches behind a 7/0, and I put my bait on that. That way, if a 10-pounder is biting short, I'll get him too.
There you go. So you're fishing with a smaller hook than what the average fishermen out there are throwing now. Like, I throw nothing but 8/0 Gamakatsus.
Yeah, I've killed so many fish doing a big hook. I used to fish a mustad, a big mustad hook, and I put that thing through several fish's skull up there above their eyeball pretty hard and bleed them bad, and I just quit using that big hook. It just hooks them so deep.
Right. Yeah, there's some of them hooks out there today. There's thick hooks. I like the design of them, but the hooks are thick.
Yeah.
And then if you do happen to get it, say, into their jaw, you dang near tear that fish up trying to get that hook out of it. And I went back to a lighter wire hook. That's why I like the Gamakatsus, because they're not a real thick hook.
Yeah.
But I mean, they'll stick and they'll get them. But I know I've heard some people talking about breaking them. I've never broke any.
Dale's tackle. Dale Dunaway, Dale's tackle down in Louisiana. He sent me some hooks that looks identical to some of the hooks he's selling. They look identical to the Daiichi hooks.
Right.
And I've tried some of those. They seem to work really, really good too. And I ain't pushing no.
Right.
That's just what I use. And the weight of the hook is a lot of why I use them. It's not got any weight. It's a good hook. It's not got any weight. When they pick that bait up, they're not going to feel that big piece of steel in there.
There you go. Braid or mono?
Oh, braid all the way. I'll use 80-pound, and I like spider wire and Visa-Braid, because you can get 80-pound in it, and it's the same size as 15-pound monofilament.
Oh.
And when I'm bumping bottom and a lot of current, that makes a lot of difference.
I was a bass fisherman back in the day when that spider wire first come out, and it like to claim that finger right there, because I was a line filler and a worm fisherman.
Yeah.
And I had a 15-pound spider wire, which turned out to be about the diameter of a 2-pound line, and that stuff like to cut that. It cut it slam to the bone. Yeah, I learned the hard way with that stuff. You don't line fill that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, one of the common mistakes with braid is people try to use too small a braid. 80 is as small as I'm going to use. When you get down to 50-pound braid or smaller, it'll cut into the spool. It's so fine it'll cut into the spool, and the drag don't work like it ought to.
Right.
You know, when it cuts down, saws down into there, it don't turn the spool, and you drag, you know, tightens up, or your drag don't work right. And
but now you was talking about using that lighter wire hook. Do you have to run your drag a little bit light then, wouldn't you?
Well, not really. One thing that I do, I see a lot of guys when they hook a fish, and I'm talking about, you know, some guys that's been in it for a long time, but I mean, they're excited and they go jerking on that fish. And most of the time, my fish don't even know he's in a fight till I get him in a dip net. He just feels a little uncomfortable, you know.
Mike Greenwell, he's a big bumper too. He asked, he said, even bumping, Larry, do you use your 80-pound braid?
Yes, that's why I use the 80-pound spider wire Invisibraid when I'm bumping, because it's smaller diameter, so it don't catch so much water, you know, especially in the Mississippi River or something like that.
So there's quite a few of them in here that are river fishermen. Are there any safety tips that you can give them while we're on that subject of river fishing?
Oh boy, I could tell you quite a few things. I don't know just exactly what I need to say specific, but mainest thing in the river is pay attention. And remember, that river don't stop for nobody. It's always rolling. It don't stop. And I've been in some tights before in it, and all I can say is pay attention.
Now on that, as far as river fishing, you going out in a spot, what was one of the first things that you might look for to even start checking? Like, I don't know. I'll back it up. Do you pre-fish for a tournament?
Yeah, I do a little bit, not very much at all. And, you know, sometimes I have to put a bait in there and see, but most of the time I look nowadays, especially the last few years, I don't pre-fish much, but if I went to a river that say I'm looking at a stretch of river that I hadn't fished before or hadn't fished much, first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to deep bends. I'm gonna check the deep bends, especially if the river's on a fall. I'm gonna check the deep bends. If the river's on a rise, then I'm gonna start looking at water coming in and some other different things, you know, some big flats and stuff like that if it's on the rise. But if the water's on a fall and I hit a river and the water's falling, then I'm going to start hitting the deepest places I can find in that river until I find fish usually.
Got you. Jay's Catfishing wants to know what's your largest catfish you caught.
During the 2008 Bass Pro Championship in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, I caught a 101.5 catfish, a big fish of the tournament, and that's been my biggest fish so far.
Right. That's claiming 100-pounder in a tournament is something else. That's something you just don't hear about very often, is a 100-pound fish being brought to the scales during a tournament.
Yeah, this was in the national championship, and Jeff Dodd called me. Well, he had called me. He said, "Man, I'm doing pretty good." This was back when you could talk on the cell phone in the tournament. Some of them you can't now, but back then we talked all the time. And he said, "Man, I'm doing pretty good." He said, "I got a 40 and a 50 in here." And he said, "Have you done any good?" And I said, "No, not yet, but I spotted a good one." And in a minute, I called him back, and I said, "Man, I'm on my way to weigh in." I said, "I got one that his gills, he's on his side and his gills coming plumb out of the water in the live well." I said, "I think he's bigger than both of your fish put together." He said, "You kidding?" I said, "No, I think he is." And he was.
Dang right.
Yeah.
Mike Greenwell said, when bumping and you know that fish is holding tight to a piece of structure, how close are you going to bump to it? And Lyle from Catfish Weekly says hi.
Hey, well, hey, Lyle. Good to hear from you, buddy. Hey, a lot of people, I don't break off much tackle at all. I just don't break off no tackle. I mean, everybody breaks off some, but I don't break off much at all. If there's some fish in the top and I've got current, I'm just going to slow that boat down and I'm going to just miss the edge of that top and I'm going to start back bumping. I'm going to start bumping back, several yards, 100 yards or so up above those fish. And I'm going to let the scent of my bait draw them fish out. Because what them fish do, them fish that live in that river where that current's running all the time, they got to line up on stuff coming down that river. So when they smell something, they're going to swim out. And as long as that scent gets stronger, they're going to keep swimming out. And as soon as it gets weaker, they're going to stop. They're going to be sitting there waiting on you when you come across the end of that brush pile. And so I don't hang up. While them other fellas hung up in the treetop, I come down through there and catch the fish.
Makes perfect sense to me. That's one thing I didn't like the idea. We got some guys that they're really flathead fishermen and they chase them heavy. And they'll go into the cover after them. And I just never liked the idea of maybe breaking one of those fish off and him being all tangled up in heavy line, tied up right against that tree where he can't break free. Yeah. And I just didn't like that idea. So I'll fish the outskirts of it. And usually if I'm fishing the outskirts of any kind of debris, whether it's trees, concrete, old bridge pilings or whatever, I try to fish right around the outskirts. And like you said, maybe let the scent bring them to me. And I lock my drags down and make sure that I really pay attention to those rods. So if they go down, I can get my hands on it as quick as possible and maybe get their head turned. Not always will you get their heads turned, but
I'll tell you something else I learned fishing heavy cover and stuff like that too. Those fish try to go back in that cover. If you'll leave that fish deep, if you won't try to crank him up, if you try to pull him up, he's going to head back down and he's going to head to that cover hard. The best thing you can do with that fish is leave that fish deep. Go ahead and get him hooked up good. Leave him down there deep and take that boat and troll away from him. Troll out away from that stuff before you ever start to bring him up. You can lead him around like a dog all day long as you don't start bringing him toward the top of that water.
Have a name.
Yeah, I caught a big flathead up below Wilson Dam one day, and he kept running back in the rocks with me. And I got to taking the trolling motor and pulling back. I was trying to get a different angle on him, get him out of them rocks. Well, as long as I left him deep and I could troll out, he'd just go with me. But when I'd start cranking him up, he'd head back to them rocks. So I trolled him out there, got him so far away from them rocks that he couldn't get back. Then I cranked him up. But I've done a few fish that way since then. That 101-pounder, I actually caught that fish in a ditch in the side of the river. There's a ditch coming in the side of the river down in about 80 feet of water. And that fish, there was timber on each side of that ditch all up in there. And when I hooked that fish right there, it happened to be about a year after I'd done that flathead that way. And when I hooked that fish and I realized what he was, I just turned that trolling motor out toward the center of the river channel. And I just eased on out there with him and held on to him until he followed me on out there. And then I started easing him on up.
Okay.
I don't know. If I'd stayed right there close to that timber, I'd never put that fish in the boat.
It kept you tangled up in the brush, wouldn't it?
I guarantee you would. Ain't no doubt. Because he surged on me 3 or 4 times out there, but it wasn't nothing for him to get around.
Right. Yeah, you can get them away from that cover. You pretty much got them whooped. But if there's any cover around there, they gonna try their dangest to get rid of that hook and line or whatever they tangled up with. They ain't sure what they tangled up with, but they don't like it.
No, and you start pumping and bringing them to the top of the water, they don't like that none neither.
No, I don't guess I would either.
I'm telling you, you try it next time you get a whole fish. Man, ease off with him. He'll just come on with you. You're just making him uncomfortable. Just bend that rod a little bit. Don't pull and jerk on him. Just Just have your rod about half bent and just ease that boat away. He'll come right on with you because you're pulling on that jaw, and then you'll come on, and then get him on out there away from that stuff, and then crank him up.
There you go. Some good information, guys. I'm trying to see how. I thought we had about 50 people in here. I forgot to bring it up on my phone to see how many. Because on the computer, when I'm running this other program, I can't see how many people we got online. We got 44. We had 50 people on here a minute ago. Some of them jumped off. Let's see. We had a few more questions. Now, I've got a question for you, and this is something I'll try to ask everybody because I want some different opinions. Do you think that a catfish really gets more specific as to what he eats, as to what season it is, like spring when the crappie go to the beds to spawn? Do you think that would be your best bait? Even though a catfish, they're pretty optimistic and they'll eat pretty much what comes across their face. But as far as getting the bites, do you think that has something to do with it?
Oh yeah, well, like I say, I use skipjack 90% of the time, and 90% of the time I fish deep water. But I know that I've been brim fishing in the spring, and 50-pound catfish up there in the water, and people hollering, "Hey, them catfish are spawning." No, them blue cat ain't spawning in May, not where we live. They spawn middle of June to the middle of July here, and then they do it out there deep where they stay most of the time. But they are opportunists, and whenever that shallow water is full of other fish's eggs, they coming up there to eat them eggs, and they just cruising there and eating the eggs out of them brim crappie beds, and that's what they're doing now. Can you catch them when they're doing that? Well, sure you can. Sure you can if you want to fish that way. But I just wait for them to go on back out there where they belong, catch them out there.
There you go. So you'd rather catch them in them deeper waters than you had up there in shallow water fishing.
Yeah, I had, because of the style I like to fish. I like to relax, fish right straight down. And, if you're in 25 foot of water, that boat's casting a shadow and you're running more fish off than you catching. But if you're out there in 60 foot of water, 70 foot of water, then they don't pay that boat much mind. You can fish right straight under the boat and kind of kick back, relax, and still cover some water. It ain't like sitting there anchored waiting on one to come up. I'm still covering water and stuff, but I'm doing it out there in deep water where I'm not noticed. I'm staying as far as I can away from the fish.
Right. I know that, by fishing rivers, a thermocline is pretty much something you don't ever have to worry about. Right here, we're mainly lakes, and that's something we do have to deal with. So a lot of our fishing does come in shallow water.
Yeah.
So that's where, we got to cast them lines out, get them away from the boats and stuff. I mean, back in January, I was anchored in 4 foot of water and catching catfish in 1 and 2 foot of water.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, it is. That's when I get my tail tore up, when them fish get in that kind of water, because I just don't usually fish that way. And
right. Well, it blew my mind because it was in January. Do you think a lot of the way that most catfishermen start off their chasing of the catfish comes from wise tails and miss, and not necessarily what we need to be doing to catch them fish? Or do you think that the wise tails and the miss actually has some truth behind it?
Well, the biggest one right now, rod and reel fish, is 143 pounds. And I've seen some fish. I've had a 105 pounder caught in my boat. That 101 and a half I was talking about, I caught, and several in the 90s and stuff. And I've seen some big fish. And I'm going, I don't think I've seen anything over 150 pounds. These folks that talk about diving and seeing these fish bigger, everywhere you go, there's somebody in that town. I was in Decatur, Alabama, and there was a lady there that told me most of them say that they seen seen a fish that was as big as a Volkswagen, you know, or so and so dived, and they seen a fish that was Volkswagen. Well, this lady told me her uncle dived, and he seen a fish that could swallow a Volkswagen, so that's a pretty good fish.
That was a 1950s Buick, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe if I see that fish, I believe I could tell he was pretty good, you know.
Ooh, that rat's gonna be swimming south, getting away from me. He'd be saying, "Ooh, what's that smell? What's that smell?"
Yeah, well, I've had side scan and down scan as long as it's been out there. I was one of the first ones to ever get it and everything, and I've seen some big fish, but you know, anything over 150 pounds is going to be a rare thing. And
right. You think most of your big fish stay deep 80% of the time?
I do. I stay deep most of the time. I just enjoy fishing deep, and I just feel like I got a better chance of catching the biggest fish in the river if I can be deep. You know, I just like it deep.
What about lakes?
Lakes, whew. I fish deep in the lakes too if they're showing fish down there. If they're not,
right.
You know, a lot of times, man, they good out there in Texas. They 50, 60, 70 foot of water out there, and they ain't no need fishing it because it's a ghost town out there. You look at your down scan, your side scan. There's nothing out there. It's just not anything there. You got it before you got to mark some fish. Usually, I mean, now I've had times when I didn't mark fish, but usually it's because they was watered down in the mud in the Mississippi River. I've had one of my best days ever. I weighed in 245 pounds and 5 fish on the Mississippi River at Vicksburg, Mississippi, a couple years ago, and I never marked the first fish, but I knew where they were. Because the river had been falling for about 6 weeks, and there was some deep water out there and some mud, a mud bottom. I bounced around out there in hard sand a little bit, and when I hit mud, I said, we'll catch some fish now, because them fish have been going deep till they started going deep, and they probably found somewhere deep to water down in the mud. And so sure enough, when we hit mud, I put me and my little brother's fishing, Dino, and we hit mud, and I put a waypoint. Well, I said I hit mud, and about that time my brother hooked a fish, and so I set a waypoint right then, and we run right back to that point and made 5 drifts, and we caught 5 fish, and we went straight to weigh in and weighed them in. The biggest one was 87 pounds. And we never marked the fish. It was just that mud was loaded with them, and we never marked the fish.
So, but it was right there where the change up was happening.
Yeah. Well, I looked up the river. Anytime you hunting mud in the Mississippi River, or it's worked for me so far. I fished the Mississippi all the way from St. Louis all the way down to Vicksburg, and just about every bit of it. There's a little stretch between Greenville and Vicksburg I hadn't fished, but if you see the river choke down narrow and see it open up real big and then choke down there again, you know, within sight, you know, it might be a mile between it. You find a big pool in the middle of it, and you run up through there. If you find deep water in that pool when it chokes twice like that, there's going to be mud in it. It's going to hold some mud. Yep. And if that river's on a hard fall, now it's got to be a hard fall. It can't be was rising last week and it's just falling this week. This is when I really like to fish, and that's early fall or late summer. And when that river gets on a hard fall, and it's amazing what's in that mud in them deep holes.
Somebody's asking about your electronics.
I'm still using a Onyx. I hadn't went to the Helix or the Solix yet, but I'm using the Onyx. It's been upgraded, and every time they had an upgrade come up, it's been upgraded. It'll do the same thing that the Helix and Sonix does, except I got a 10-inch screen instead of the 12 or the 15-inch screen. But I like it. I'm real comfortable with that unit, and as long as it stays with me, I'm going to stay with it, because and I've got a 360 also. I've got a 360 transducer also.
Right. Palmetto Cat says, for somebody just getting started to bumping, what would you recommend them to? How do you recommend somebody getting started into bumping? Well, you do that, Larry. I'm going to do a drawing on giving away a set of my Patriot bobbers, if you don't mind. So I'll let you answer that question while I spin the wheel a little bit.
All right. There's several good bumping rods out there now, and if that's what you're asking about equipment, but there's several good bumping rods out there now. Warrior Cat bumping rods makes the best bumping rod on the market, in my opinion. I've been on their pro staff for a good while, and that's a real nice rod. It's real sensitive. It's stiff. It'll handle bigger fish you want to catch, and I like it. B&M has got a bumping rod that some of my buddies, Jeff Dodd, and some of them helped design, and they're a little more affordable, and they got a good bumping rod. There ain't nothing wrong with that bumping rod. I've been spanked with that bumping rod, so it's a good bumping rod. And if you're asking about equipment, that's good. Them's good bumping rods. And if you're asking about how to get started as far as technique and how to fish current, I like to stay in current that's say 3 mile an hour or less, because when I cut that current in half, I like to be, I love bumping a mile an hour or less, but a lot of times you end up bumping a mile and a half an hour. What I like to do is, if I'm bumping 3 mile an hour current, and if you just turn the boat loose and you're running 3 miles an hour, then when you set your trolling motor up and point it upstream, try to cut that in half. I don't like to run my trolling motor over 5 or 6, because one thing, you use your battery up quick, and you heat that trolling motor up pretty bad too when you go to run that thing up there at 9 or 10. So I like to run it around 5 or 6, just to conserve power and everything. So that's why I stay under 3 mile an hour current. And then I put that thing, say I put it on 5, and I've got it down to 1.2 or 1.2 or 1 or something like that.
Right.
At least cut it in half or a little less, what just dead wide open current was. And then you're going to pick you up a sinker and let you some line out there and hit the bottom. Go ahead and put your bait on there, skipjack, chunk, head, fillet, whatever you're going to use, and hit the bottom. Well, the way you got the right back pressure on it, on the boat, you're holding back against the current. Well, you hold back up against the current is to let the center of your bait spread out and go down that river, so them fish can get staged up and be ready for you when you come there. You could just rip right on down through there, and a lot of people do. But them fish, you got to run over them when you do that. But when you hold back, you letting your scent work for you, and so you putting a scent down the river, and they already know you coming way before you get there, and they sitting there ready for it. Well, you want to bump that line out there, and when I'm in the zone, what I call in the zone, I say, okay, boys, we're in the zone now, because I'll be having to let out line about every third time that I go to touch bottom with that sinker. And don't go beating and whacking that bottom. Don't just pump it like that right there. No, just take it and actually just try to treat that bottom like it's hot. If you're going to touch something hot, you ease down slow and then you pull up fast. Ease down slow and pull up fast. Well, human nature, because everybody I get in the boat to teach how to bump, they want to let it down quick. They want to drop it and then pick it up slow. You can't do that, because what you're doing to that fish, you're going at it like that right there. Well, he don't like it. He's just going to move out of the way of that. You done scared him with it. Stuff don't come down the river trying to spook him like that. And so ease it down slow and pick it up fast. Ease it down slow and pick it up fast. You see what I'm saying?
And that fast motion upward will get a reaction bite a lot of times more than it will from a scent bite, because bait fish that might flutter down from being injured, as soon as they hit that bottom, they're going to take off back to the surface or back upward.
Yeah. But
So
the biggest thing that quick up motion does is keep you from being hung up on the bottom of that river. That's the biggest thing that quick up motion does.
Okay.
But yeah, you know, you just you don't want to flog them with it, you know.
Right. Well, the winner of the red, white, and blue bobbers that I make is Lyle from Catfish Weekly.
All right.
Lyle, give me a call tomorrow and send me your address, my friend, and congratulations. And I'll get a set of bobbers on the way to you, and I've got a T-shirt for him too there. Mr. Moose. Oh, so as far as bumping, are they a minimum of the speed of the current that you need to look for before you can even start bumping?
If that water's moving, you can bump. You might have to use a half-ounce sinker. You may have to back down to half. If it'll push that boat down the river, if it'll let that boat down the river, you know. Well, when I won the Monsters on the Ohio tournament, I was waiting for current because they was a stretch there that I wanted to bump bottom in, and we didn't have no current that day hardly at all. And I kept looking, and every now and then I'd see the river moving just a little bit, and we were sitting suspended in a hole, and we caught pretty good stringer fish, but I knew where some good ones was, and so right at the end of the day there, we didn't have but about an hour left to fish. I said, boys, that river's moving a little bit. I said, I believe we can fish it, and we put on some 3/4 ounce bank sinkers to bump with. And we went up there, and the river wasn't running a full mile an hour. It was running about 7/10 is what the river was running. And I put the trolling motor on as low as I could put it. And just, you know, on one or a half really, and pointed it upstream. And we just kind of sat there, and our lines went out behind us just a little bit, and we wasn't bumping 10 foot behind the boat when we caught the fish that put the icing on the cake right there and just come down through there. And I mean, we just barely had enough current to bump, and that was about 7/10. If you've got a mile an hour current, you can bump, but you're going to have to use a light sinker.
Gotcha. Well, Lyle said that he would appreciate it. He'd love to have a set, but he wants to give it back to somebody else in chat. Oh, Doc Lane's in the house tonight. I didn't see him till a minute ago when I was going back through here. So we're going to spin it again, Larry, and give a set away. And guys, sorry, I don't have none up here in the building, but I was running late, and I wanted to get up here and talk with Larry for a second. And there we go. Spin, spin, spin. DMV Whisker King. DMV Whisker King. Message me on Messenger or text me at 704-600-8369. My friend, and we'll get you a set of bobbers on the way. Somebody had a question and I mispassed. Oh, somebody want to know, do you use any kind of like demon dragons or rattles on your rigs?
I've used, I've experimented with some stuff. I didn't ever used to use any of that stuff. I always tied a bloom. If you look at the dragon tail that I come up with years ago, I used a bloom for a floater on it. I've been using some of the dragon shads and dragon demons and different things. Dragon shad, I've done some experimental stuff with it. It worked good. I don't know that it worked any better than my bloom, but you know, it looked better. It looked better than that old bloom tied on there. And I don't know about rattles. I ain't crazy about rattles. Some people are, and that's all right. And I've probably been spanked with them rattles before too, but I ain't really crazy about them.
Okay, well, DMV said he's done got some daggum bobbers from me. He's wanting to donate them back to the show too. So here we go. Hey, I can't give them away, Larry. I don't know what it is.
Well, these boys ain't needing no bobbers. Evidently, they know where there's some bumping to be done.
That might be.
Yeah.
Team Slinging Lead Catfish. Christian, get a hold of me, my friend, and I'll run them down the road and deliver them to you. Team Slinging Lead. He's melting lead and pouring lead and slinging sinkers and making sinkers for people and doing a great job. So, Miss Paula Smith said, you know everything about catfishing. They call
Nah,
it.
no, I don't know everything. I'll guarantee you that.
Just as soon as we say we do it.
I have days when I feel like I don't know nothing.
Hey, as soon as we say we know everything, we get our tail handed to us big time, won't we?
You doggone right.
Yeah, I don't mess with karma or Mother Nature. Them two right there will whoop you like a dog.
yeah, they will.
Oh, as far as now, as far as lake fishing, I know you'd rather river fish or whatever, but being a tournament fisherman, I know you have to fish your share of lakes. When you start out on new water as far as lakes, you know you're probably not going to run into currents. So that's having to totally change your game up. Really, how much difference? Well, I guess it'd be a lot of difference. Do you ever anchor when you're lake fish? Are you still trolling or?
Sometimes I'll spot lock in a lake. Like if I find, like say I find some fish in timber, I will. When I talk about a lake, I'm talking about the lakes on the Tennessee River, which are still, part of the time when there's not no current running, and there's usually a little bit of a flow going downstream. It's probably not enough to even notice, but it's enough to usually carry the scent of a bait. And I will spot lock a little ways upstream or just above, and just sit there and let. I usually suspend, because usually when you're in a no current situation, most of the time the fish I'm looking for, the big fish, they're not on the bottom. Most of the time they're up off the bottom. And so
your wife's in here watching you.
I'm gonna spot lock and I'm gonna suspend.
I believe your wife's in here watching. Is her name Joyce Muse?
Yeah.
Welcome to the show, Joyce. Thank you for coming in.
Making sure I don't say nothing bad about her.
Making sure you're at your brother's house.
Yeah.
She knows you good enough. Y'all been together long enough. She knows better than that.
Oh yeah.
Does she ever fish with you?
She don't care much about the water. She has fished with me a few times. She's caught some pretty good fish, but she don't care too much about being out there in the water and boats. She can't swim. She just don't like being out there on that water too much.
Yeah, that's the way the wife is. She kind of like, we go out, there's a little small lake up there, basically a waterworks lake that usually there ain't no current and there ain't no chop on it. And took her to Wiley one time and got her out there on Wiley, and all them boats running around. And that old pontoon boat got to wobbling back and forth, which I know was fine, but she don't have no sea legs to her. Let's go. Time to go. I'm ready to go back to the dock. I'm done. So
yeah, I'll take my wife on the Mississippi River one time, and she'd probably leave me.
Yeah. Leave you or shoot you and leave you out there. One of the two.
It would be a good thing. I guarantee you that.
Oh, Lord. And I'm sure you've had some close calls out there on that Mississippi River and on lakes. I mean, you've said you fish down here on South Carolina, and I assumed you come to Santee Cooper.
Yeah.
That's just a hop and a skip below the house.
Yeah. One of the toughest tournaments I fished was on Santee Cooper. I fished a tournament that started at 6 o'clock one evening and went until 4 o'clock the next afternoon. We fished all night and all day, and during the night, about halfway through the tournament, about midnight or a little after, it come a storm, and we was out there in the dark on a big old lake I'd never been on in my life, and that got real. Now, I was in a 20-foot sea arc back in them days, and it was good. It was a good thing it wasn't an 18-foot one, because I probably would have never made it back.
I'm gonna tell you, that's one thing. Santee, especially the lower lake, is bowl shaped.
Yeah.
And it don't take much for that daggone wind to throw a chop on that lake, and it will scare you. I've seen days that I wished I hadn't have been out there when it come up a chop, and it'd be ice slick. And then 5 minutes later, you have 2, 3, 4 foot rollers coming around you.
Yeah. I was sure proud when I got back in that canal up there.
Oh, I'm sure you was. So it's about a 4-hour drive for me to get down there to the places that I like to go. I love that lake. That's a love-hate relationship with that lake. You can do good today, and then you go down there and fish the same way tomorrow. Not even the same place, but use some of the same techniques and be dink city or no fish. And it's got a lot of structure. Well, they started building it, then World War II broke out, and they had to went ahead and finished damming it up.
Yeah.
A lot of standing timber in them waters.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like the lake now. It's good. I'd like to catch it. I like to catch it when the conditions right, that it'd be on my terms. Usually when I've been there, the fish have been shallow, and that's just not my cup of tea. But I did catch some pretty decent fish in there.
But I imagine when they're like right now, we've been having a lot of water in the Catawba river chain, and they've been moving a lot of water, and that's why a couple of these guys is probably asking about the bumping. There's been days that we could have went to the dam on Lake Wiley and bumped all the way down because of the current.
Yeah.
And probably had to use a pretty good sized trolling motor to keep you steady going down it. But I imagine on some of the canals down there on Santee, when they move in a good bit of water, you probably could bump them rascals right there too, couldn't you?
Oh, I bet you could. Yeah, if that water's moving, you could do it. One place I really love fishing is on the James River over in Virginia. When that tide comes in and goes out, you can bump one way part of the day and then turn around and bump the other way the other part of the day. And I fished that thing about 10 years in a row there at one time. I hadn't fished it in the last couple of years, but I fished that about 10 years in a row. And man, that was really I always look forward to going fishing that because didn't nobody else bump out there. And man, I could bump in some of them narrow cuts and stuff. And boy, them fish, they didn't know no better than to take it.
Well, I'm going to say something, and it's basically a question, but not a question. Since you're a big-time bumper and you like bumping, I would assume that in your day that you chased the bass.
Oh,
the green dish pickle.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I did. It's kind of like Apostle Paul. He says, when I was a child, I thought as a child. I spake as a child. Man, I put away childish things.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do like the sport of it. It's something different. I think that to me, out here in North Carolina, we can use game fish as bait. You have to catch them lining, hook and line. You have to count them as part of your creel. And I'm probably going to have a couple bass fishermen hate me on it, but that's my favorite bait is a largemouth bass. Makes big baits, big chunks of bait. And I've caught both my largest blue and flatheads on largemouth bass.
Yeah.
With that being said, me, Team Wampuscat in here at one time actually tournament fished bass. But I've got a buddy of mine that the bass scene has really beat him hard. And here, about a month ago, he said, James, how you fishing for blues? I said, right now, I ain't even on the cotton picking water. He said, well, fish underneath docks. He said, because I'm wearing them blue catfish out on a rubber worm underneath these freaking docks.
Yeah.
And he said, it's a picture. He's catching good freaking catfish underneath these docks.
Yeah, they was probably in there eating them bass's eggs is probably what they was doing.
Eat them daggum bluegill that hangs out around them docks and bass too. I mean.
Yeah. Now, catfish ain't real picky about what they'll eat. They'll eat another catfish and drop a hat.
Oh, yeah.
I had a 70-pounder spit one up one time, and we weighed the one he spit up, and it weighed 8 pounds.
Really?
I had a 70-pounder eat an 8-pound.
That's something I've said that I don't think we can use too big of baits.
Well, depends on what size fish is down there.
Yeah, well, that's true. But, a 50-pound flathead can take a 10-pound channel cat.
Oh,
blue cat.
Yeah. I seen Sam Brooks catch I think it was an 89-pound blue cat in the Mississippi River. And that joker, he was fishing with a jumping carp head that was big as a football, if not bigger.
That ain't right.
Yeah, he said, "Look at my bait," and I said, "Yeah, man." I said, "If you catch one on that, it's gonna be a good one." The minute he called me, he said, "Man, I caught one." Yeah.
And it was a blue cat.
Blue cat.
Well, it had to be a monster because, you know, a blue cat's mouth ain't nowhere near the size of old Flathead's mouth.
Yeah, when they get to be 89 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah, 89 pounder, he got a good mouth on him.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Larry, it is a little after 9 o'clock, and I don't like holding people up much later than that on the show. It's been a great show. You've answered a lot of questions, give us a lot of good insight. Before we go, and I very rarely asked it, but would you like to share a little word with us?
Yeah. As far as tournament fishing and such as that, and just how to really take it in general, you know, first thing we need to do, we need to put God first, put our family second, and our work somewhere, and fishing's got to fall in there somewhere too. But mainest thing, put God first, and everything else fall in place.
Mr. Larry Moose, I want to thank you, my friend. Hope we'll do it again. If you ever get out there on the water and you get a good signal, give me a holler. And I'd like to bring you in one night on the show or one day on the show if you're out there on the water to give us a little insight of your boat and how you set up and stuff like that. Because we got a lot of guys that's real curious about the bumping and some of the techniques that some of the older school guys have learned over the years that they might pick up on that will help their fishing game. So that being said, thank you, Larry.
All right, buddy. I appreciate you having me. You have to get in the boat with me sometime and we'll go.
I'll have to fly out. That's a little bit of a drive for me from North Carolina. I'm right here beside Charlotte, North Carolina. So you might have to pick me up at the airport.
Well, we can do that. We can do that.
Larry, we thank you for coming in, my friend. We thank everybody for coming in chat. We appreciate it. Christian, get a hold of me for the bobbers. Larry, I got your phone number. I'll keep in touch with you, my friend.
All right, buddy. Good talking to you.
That being said, God bless America, y'all. God bless y'all. Take care of your families. Shake a veteran's hand. Tell them thank you. Shake a policeman's hand. Tell them thank you for the job that they do for this country. They on the front lines to keep us safe. God bless everybody, and good night.
Amen.